Tracks, and we're going to talk about how you could solo over just one chord, kind of an A major 7 idea. And we're going to start with from kind of a general idea and then get to a very specific sense of the chord. And we're going to start with just a pentatonic scale. And you may be familiar with just pattern 1 of pentatonic. And this is probably the most useful scale pattern of all time, because you can't really play a note that's really sounds bad. So whatever finger, if you're working with pattern 1, your pinky is on, that's what major pentatonic scale is. So right now I'm lining my pinky up the 5th fret on the low E string, doing first finger on the 2nd fret on the low E string. It's kind of an F sharp note. And the 5 notes that make up the scale are A's, B's, C sharps, and then E's and F sharps. And so that's kind of a pretty simple pattern to kind of get down, kind of a 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4 from the 2nd fret. And there's lots of lick ideas you may want to play around with if you're just jamming on a chord. You can work rhythm ideas, kind of working kind of divisions of 2, kind of an 8th note ideas, kind of reviewing some things I talk about in some of my Talking with the Guitar videos here. Or you could do triplets, kind of dividing things into 3s, which is kind of a cool idea. Or you could divide things into 4s, kind of working 16th notes as kind of an idea rhythmically. Or you could really do any subdivision if you play anything about 5s. Or 6s. Or 7s. Or 8s. So you can play around with rhythm ideas in the scale. There's also lots of technical ideas you may want to play around with. Hammer-ons is kind of a technical idea, kind of playing the first note of the pattern with the pick, and then just putting the finger down to carry the sound. Or you can do pull-offs, kind of through the pattern. It's kind of a cool lick idea. Slides can kind of work, working kind of slides from one note of the scale to the next note of the scale. Or you can work down slides, can be a cool idea. Or sometimes you might want to even kind of try bends in the scale. So kind of bending the note, kind of playing the note and pressing down and into the guitar at the same time, or up and into the guitar at the same time. Can be kind of a cool thing to say. And then double stops is kind of a cool lick idea where you do 2 notes together. Where you do a bend and then a lot of little bends after it. You may want to kind of readjust the thumb, sometimes get more leverage from the neck and kind of be a little bit easier to work that, and there's lots of variations of that. So you may want to play around with vibrato too. So all these can be cool lick ideas to kind of say some things in the scale. There's also different ways you can organize the scale. One of my favorite ways is kind of a patterns of 3 thing where you go up 3 notes from each note in the scale. So you know with kind of a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the basic concept is up 3 notes, back one, up 3 notes from that note, back one, up 3 notes from that one. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can be kind of a cool idea to work to. Or you could reverse that. Kind of work patterns of 3 the other way. Or you could try patterns of 4 where you do 4 notes from each note of the scale. So it's kind of interesting because you end up on the same side of the pattern. It's almost like a up 4, drop a string kind of an idea. So kind of that 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're back to the low E fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're back to A on the second, and then D on the 4, and then D on the 2, and then D on the 4, G on the 2. So you know, I kind of play around with that. Kind of patterns of 4 can be kind of a cool idea too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of an idea. Or something else that can be kind of cool is playing around with 1 note per string patterns where you work skips through the pattern. And this is a little weird, but you can kind of think of all the 2nd fret notes as the 1st note of the pattern. And then the other side of the pattern is kind of the 2nd note of the pattern. So kind of a 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And you work little patterns where you do 1st note, 2nd note, 1st note, 2nd note, 1st note, 2nd note, almost diagonally through the scale. Might be kind of cool. Or you could work it from the other side, kind of a 2nd note, 1st note, 2nd note, 1st note, 2nd note, 1st note idea with a 1 note per string pattern. Just playing 1 note per string. Or from the other side, remember to play around with that too. That would be kind of cool. Or you could put like little groups together, kind of a 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1 can be kind of cool. So basically, just finding different ways to kind of work your way through the scale can give you some cool lick ideas. So that might be kind of a really cool way just in general to kind of work just a scale pattern under the fingers. Now another scale that can be kind of cool over a major 7 chord is a major scale. And so you may want to use an A major scale. This kind of adds in some notes to the pentatonic. Now we got 2 extra notes. So your basic major scale pattern would start from 5th fret on the low E string, kind of the A note. And you could kind of work it as kind of a 5th fret to 7th fret to 9th fret. And I'm working a stretch pattern. There's lots of ways to do this, but I think this is easier to remember. So you get kind of a 5, 7, 9 on the low E, and then 5, 7, 9 on the A. And then we go 7 or 6, 7, 9 on the D, 6, 7, 9 on the G. And then we go 7, 9, 10 on the B, and then 7, 9, 10 on the high. So it might be kind of cool. I like that pattern because it's the same pattern on 2 strings. And that's your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale. Kind of that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the notes you're playing when you do that is kind of an A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and then kind of starting over B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and then B, C sharp, D. So really only have 7 notes, and you could even think about it as those numbers, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of an idea for the scale. And that kind of ends up being our ruler for other scales, and you can we'll talk about kind of adjusting that for some other sounds too. But you may want to take the technical ideas we were just doing, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and kind of work it in that scale pattern. take those patterns of 3 ideas we were doing and then try that through the major scale. Slightly different adjustment there, but still same idea. 3 notes back on, it's just 4 notes in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that might be kind of a cool thing to kind of try too, and kind of have in your bag of tricks for things to say. Now something else you might want to do is there are other scales. If you just have one isolated major chord, you can really imagine this as the first chord in a key, which we're kind of doing right now, playing major scale, kind of over A major. Or you can think about it as the fourth chord in a key, which is kind of cool. And then this basically turns into a sound called Lydian, where you take the major scale, but then we sharp the 4 of the scale, and then kind of go on with the 5, 6, 7. So you got 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, from where we were. So we carried that all through, then you have the 2, and the 3, and the sharp 4, kind of the G string on the 8th fret, that's funny. And then we got 5, 6, 7, 1, and then 2, 3, and then a sharp 4 would be all the way on the 11 on the high E. But all those same lick ideas kind of work with the Lydian too, just very bright sound. Idea over just the major, or you could kind of take a mode of a different scale actually and kind of work it as something called Lydian sharp 2, where we take the 2s that we're doing, and instead of doing the 2s we sharp those and kind of play something normally called the flat third, but we're thinking about it as a sharp 2. So you could have kind of the 1, sharp 2, 3, and then sharp 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 1, and then we got our sharp 2. Another sound that could work is something called harmonic major, which is kind of an interesting idea, where you take the major scale and then we flat the 6s. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, and then the 7, 1. Play around with that harmonic major too. That might be kind of a cool sound to play around with too. And really, to be honest, really, as long as you kind of work around And so it can be kind of cool to get a little bit more specific and actually kind of look at just the notes of the chord. And the bass chords, or the bass notes actually of an A major 7 chord, are the A note and the C sharp note and the E note, where we were kind of working as kind of a 1, 3, and 5 in the major scale. So you could even kind of take that idea and work it across the fretboard, kind of looking for different A notes that kind of attach C sharps and E's to. So these are almost like your safe notes because they'll always sound good because they're part of the chord. So you can't really play a bad note if you're playing notes of A major over A major. Now you may also kind of see like a cool little thing across the fretboard actually with shapes actually. And this is something called the cage system actually, the chords kind of move. You almost kind of end up with an A major shape kind of in root position. But then randomly if you bar it on 2nd fret, you can almost get a G chord shape for an A major. You're looking at all those notes across the whole fretboard. And then from there, if you bar it on 5th fret, you have kind of an E shape for kind of an A major. And then from there, you almost end up with a D chord shape, kind of working off 7th fret on the D. And then from there, you end up kind of almost 9th fret bar with a C chord shape. That's kind of an A major. And then it kind of starts over again. Actually, we're kind of back to our A major from 12th fret. So that can be a cool thing to kind of just look at how those shapes move to. Kind of A shape to the G shape, to the E shape, to the D shape, to the C shape, to the A major shape. And then it kind of starts over again over the top. So you might want to kind of be aware of that. That might kind of help if you're looking for just to kind of look at some of the smaller shapes. But you may want to just go and find just those notes of the A major. And you may find some really cool little shapes too. And a lot of times with little shapes, normally really all you need is 3 notes for a chord. And we're normally playing something called the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, kind of an A, C sharp, and E. And you can make little chords out of these actually. Like for instance, on the regular A shape, if you played the G and the B and the E string of that chord, we're kind of playing a root and a 3rd and a 5th. It's kind of a bare minimum, kind of a little teeny chord. And normally you call that root position for a chord because the root is the lowest note that we're playing. So it's kind of a root 3-5 voicing for that chord. Voicing is just the order that the notes are kind of being played in. So that you're playing an A and a C sharp and an E note from the lowest note to the highest note. So I call that root position A. But you can stack those notes up in lots of different places on the guitar. So you could kind of take the high E on the 5th fret as kind of an A note, and then play the 5th on the 5th fret, that's also the 5th of the chord, on the B string 5th fret, and then take the 2nd finger for the G string 6th to get a C sharp note. So now we're playing a 3-5 root voicing for an A, kind of a little chord. So we got root 3-5, and then we got a 3-5 root. Kind of a different order, same notes. Well, then, if we wanted to, we could put the 5th in the bass. So we could go to the G string on the 9th fret for the 5th, B string 10 for an A, and then high E on the 9 for a C sharp. And now we got almost like a little D chord shape, kind of doing 5 root 3 for the chord. That's something, these are something called inversions. So if you stack things up, the root 3-5, that's called root position. If you stack it up 3-5 root, that's called first inversion. And if you stack it up 5 root 3, that's called second inversion. And then from there, you kind of be back to your root 3-5. So this might be cool voicings to go and find, looking at that whole A major chord across the neck. So you can find other places where you can do root 3-5, or 3-5 root, or 5 root 3, or root 3-5, or 3-5 root, or 5 root 3. Or you could even take those soloing ideas that we were doing over the scales and then apply those to the notes of the chord. Kind of do too is to kind of look for little licks that you could use over the chord, or use the chords for the lick. because this is an A major 7 chord though, we could add another note to what we're working right now for kind of our chords. So we got A, C sharp, and E is the root and the third and the fifth of the chord. The G sharp note would be the 7th of the chord, or what we call the 7th of the chord. And those notes together make an A major 7 chord. So it can be kind of cool to take that idea of just doing the arpeggios and kind of add in the 7, kind of root 3, 5, 7, root 3, 5, 7, root 3, 5, 7. And kind of just find different places where those notes are. And the cool thing about the 7 is it's always right behind the root. So if you know where the A is, that 7's right behind it. And these can be kind of cool to work patterns of 3 too, right? Kind of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you may want to kind of play around with that. Or patterns of 4. Actually, you can work all kinds of things. And if you're looking at bigger chords, then you can stack these up all kinds of different ways. So little chords with 7th chords, actually now we have 4 notes, so we end up with 4 shapes instead of 3 shapes. But a basic piano voicing for the A major 7 would be kind of working off the D string 7, G string 6, B string 5, and then high E4. So we're working on kind of a 3 root 5 7 voicing. And that's sort of a piano voicing, or what I think of as a piano voicing. Normally a piano player will stack chords up in that order, kind of root 3, 5, 7. But when we start going into other shapes, because of the way the guitar works tuning-wise, some of these shapes get extremely crazy. But just to go over them, you can do kind of a 3, and then 5, and then 7, and then roots. Oh, that's nasty. Or you can do 5, and then the 7, and then the 3. Oh wait, a 5, 7, roots, 3. Or you could do 7, and then the root, and then the 3, and then the 5. So some of these get really nasty shape-wise. So a lot of times what we do instead of playing piano voicings is we use some things called drop 2 voicings, which the basic concept here is you take the second voice above the root, in this root 3, 5, 7 voicing, that's the 5. And then what we do is we take the 5 and put it below the root. And then now it turns it into kind of a root, or a 5 root, 3, and then you can kind of hit the 7, and it makes the voicing a little bit easier to hit on the guitar. So that's called a drop 2 voicing, because you're dropping the second note above the root, below the root, which is a little weird, but it can be very, very cool too. And just to go over those voicings, actually drop 2 voicings can be very, very cool. It does kind of change some things voicing-wise. So now we could start with our root position would be using that same A note, that 7th on the D, and then you can stack the chord up, kind of root 5, 7, 3. And that's a little bit easier to kind of finger for the guitar. And then from there we can kind of use a B string root, kind of the B string on the 10th fret, and we can stack the chord up 3, 7, root 5 would be our next drop 2 voicing. So now I got 11th fret, 13th, 10th, and then 12th. To kind of get that A major 7 voicing. And then from there, well, this would be our first inversion. Our second inversion is almost this really, really cool little bar idea. Where you can do bar over the D, G, and B on the 2nd fret, and kind of take the pinky or the 3rd finger for the high E on the 4th fret, and get a 5 root 3, 7 voicing for an A major 7. And then our third inversion, we have 3 inversions, we're getting 7 chords, would kind of be working the 7th, and then the 3rd, and then the 5th, and then the root. So those voicings are a little bit easier to get to with the guitar. So we got root 5, 7, 3, and then 3, 7, root 5, and then 5, root 3, 7, and then we got 7, 3, 5 root. So that might be kind of a cool thing to kind of work small chords or piano voicings. Switching between them can be very cool. So we want to kind of play around with that for kind of that A major 7 and use smaller shapes. And if that feels pretty good on the D, G, B, and E, then you could find those same voicings in different places. So you could kind of work it as kind of a root 5, 7, 3 from the A string, D, G, and B string. And then from there we have the 3, and then 7, root 5. That's a big stretch. And then from there, then we have our 5, root 3, 7. And then from there, then we'd have our 7, 3, and 5 root. So we're going to kind of play around with those voicings too. And then once you try them on the A, D, G, and B string, you may want to look for those voicings on the E, A, D, and G strings. So root 5, 7, 3, or 3, 7, root 5. Oh, nice. Or 5, root 3, 7. Or the 7, 3, 5 root. So you kind of look for those voicings in other places. Now another possibility is something called drop 3 voicings, which is where you take the third voice above the root and drop it below. So now instead of root 3, 5, 7, then we'd be working off of 7 to kind of get a 7, and then the root, and then the 3, and then no. We got 7, and then we're going to be doing 5, and then root, and then 3. So that's a little weird, because you're going from root 3, 5, 7, and then taking the 7 as the lowest note, and now working out on the low E string to the D, G, and B strings. And that's called a drop 3 voicing, which sounds really nasty for that particular chord. But the next voicing actually is kind of cool, kind of the root 7, 3, 5. So I'm kind of using E, D, G, and B actually kind of for the root 7, 3, 5. And then from there, then our next drop 2 would kind of be working off the third. So we have kind of a 3, and then our root, and then a 5, and then our 7. That might be kind of a cool thing to practice too. Or we can kind of work off our 7 or our 5, right? We have kind of our 5, but then our 3, and then our 7, and then our root. So you know, some really cool, interesting combinations there too. And then from there, we can be going into our third inversion, kind of a root, and then a 5, root 3. Kind of start out with. So that might be kind of a cool thing to do too, is kind of try some drop 3 voicings. And you could kind of work that same idea actually from the A string to the G, B, and E with those voicings. So you could work it as kind of a root 7, 3, and then 5, kind of from the A string roots. So I'm working the A string, G, B, and E. And then from there, then we could kind of work it as the 3, and then the root, and then the 5, and then the 7. And then from there, then we could work our 5, and then our 3, so, and then our 7, and then our root. Oh wow, that's a stretch. Oh, nice there, yeah. And then from there, then we could kind of work the 7. So we'd have our 7, and then our 5, and then our root, and then our 3. So those sound nasty when you get the 7th in the bass. But you may want to kind of play around with those too. Might be kind of cool little voicings to work too. And what can work really, really well when you're soloing actually is repetition. And actually what you may want to do is take one concept and then kind of try and run with it. So on that A major, for instance, you got our A major 7. You may want to think a lot about repetition, kind of working out one idea. So you can say a lot with a little. Or you could work kind of a building exercise, kind of a lick building idea. Or you could kind of work an idea and then add a little bit more to it. And then add a little bit more. And then add a little bit more. And add a little bit more. And add a little more. That kind of idea can be very cool. So if you end up on one idea actually, working those other scale ideas can be kind of cool too. So you may want to kind of take the scale or the arpeggio as a concept too for run on the solo. So you could even work the arpeggio idea. Or you could work a scale idea. Or you could work a different scale idea. Or you could work a different scale idea. Chord ideas. What you want to do is kind of find some things that you like to say, kind of either working in the arpeggio idea or the pentatonic scale idea or the major scale idea or the Lydian idea or the Lydian sharp 2 idea or the harmonic major, you know, and not be afraid to kind of fill in the spaces too sometimes, you know, if you wanted to kind of try and point to notes just grammatically, just filling in the spaces. You can end up with a lot of really cool stuff that way too. So I know that's a lot of information to kind of throw at you, but I thought that would be kind of useful just to kind of talk about how you could solo over one chord, and if you're soloing over a different chord, it's still a major 7, you'll basically be taking everything that we just talked about and then kind of moving it up the neck for that other root note. So I hope that helps you out with your jamming. So best of luck!